Wealth leads to unending conflicts between people. Yet you alone transcend the value of gold. Baleful thunder and wrathful waves bring terror to mortal hearts. Yet again and again, you've braved them to find new worlds. O weary yet free soul, even the most verdant leaf in the forest will pray for your happiness and safe passage.
I'm sure you've all noticed that Citlali was recounting the traveler's journey through Teyvat when she looked into his fortune, which is a really neat detail. This got me thinking, and as you guys already know, it never ends well when I start thinking, not only about why she wanted to check the traveler's past, but also how she did it. For starters, Citlali is a fortune teller, and she isn't the first one of her kind whom we meet on Teyvat. The Grand Narukami Shrine also provides some fortune-telling services, albeit less reliable. Alright, let's see if it's legit. Huh? Oh, maybe it is real, I guess. Wait, what? Bro, did Makoto herself bless me, or what's going on here? Well, C3 Nahida, I guess. I suppose these ladies are the real deal after all. And they are located right next to the sacred sakura, which is a ley line tree. So I thought to myself, ley lines should have something to do with it. Then I asked myself, what's the difference between reading fortune from the ley lines and reading fate from the starry sky? Or even if there is a difference to begin with, perhaps it's as above, so below. My great search for this elusive answer led me to a Star Rail meme, and I kid you not, that single, completely random meme sent me down a rabbit hole of rocks and computers until I emerged back out with a number of extremely fascinating discoveries regarding Teyvat's fate system and the Angels of the Night Kingdom. Citlali is introduced as a wise elder from the Natlanese Masters of the Nightwind tribe, also known as Mictlan, who specialize in all manner of things involving Natlan's realm of the dead, the Night Kingdom. Of course, the Night Kingdom itself was constructed out of Natlan's ley line system by Yohualtecuhtin under the guidance of Renova and the support of the first Pyro Archon, Xabalanque. So for the Mictlan, all of their knowledge of the Night Kingdom more or less applies to the ley lines. Think of the Mictlan as Natlan's version of the Academia's Spantamad Darshan, who study the elements and the ley lines, both of which Citlali is proficient at. And since Teyvat's ley lines are intricately connected to Celestial System of Fate, the Masters of the Nightwind boast many fortune tellers, chief of whom is Granny Itztli, Citlali herself. In the Mictlan, Citlali is regarded as a living legend, not a mere fortune teller. She is seen as almost a prophetess for her ability to foretell fate, and, to her credit, Citlali is pretty good. Now, we're definitely going to learn more about her in the upcoming versions, but if I have to take a guess, her ability to predict the future lies somewhere between Barbeleth and Mona, with Barbeleth Trismegistus obviously being the best. However, Mona and Barbeleth are astrologists who decipher fate through the stars and constellations of the night sky. Citlali's methods, on the other hand, have more to do with the Night Kingdom, not the night sky. So, what we've got going here are two formulas for the same solution? And considering that Citlali often communicates with the Wayob and the Lord of the Night Kingdom, the answer would necessarily have to be in part related to them. Luckily for us, these Wayob, along with their lord, mainly exist and operate within the confines of the Night Kingdom, the realm of the dead, where they are said to be capable of seeing the past and the future, very fitting for what we are interested in. Aside from Yohualtecuhtin herself, the Night Kingdom has 6 main Obsidian totems representing the 6 great spirits of Natlan's tribes. These great spirits, also known as Wayob, utilize minor Obsidian totems called proxies to extend their consciousness throughout the entire realm. The use of Obsidian in this context is interesting for several reasons, as this rock holds significant spiritual value across many cultures, including the ones that inspire Natlan. After all, the 6 tribes of Natlan each keep an Obsidian totem to facilitate communicating with their tribe's respective Wayobs, and the ancient names of their heroes are carved into Obsidian feathers to preserve their legacies. By the way, Ajdaha's scales are also made out of golden obsidian. I don't really have anything major to add here, but if you do, then feel free to share it in the comments. Knowing all this, we cannot possibly ignore the fact that Citlali's name means Obsidian. Well, that's not entirely accurate. Her name means a star, but her alias, Granny Itztli, means obsidian in Nahuatl, an indigenous language of Central America. Or more accurately, Grandmother Obsidian. Now, if you really want to push it a step further, you could also argue that both of her names combined become Obsidian Star. And look what we have here. Obsidian Star invokes a very particular kind of imagery that is very prevalent throughout Genshin Impact's lore and story for many reasons, so perhaps I should delve into all of that. Nah, I won't. I was gonna, but I would also prefer for this video to not be an hour long either. For the sake of simplicity, let's keep this video as localized as possible without drifting into other parallel yet largely distant topics. The main point is that Citlali has profound connection to the Angels and the Wayob of the Night Kingdom. This much is undeniable, so given that the Wayob are said to know the past and the future, we can logically deduce that they are strongly influential in her outstanding divination capabilities. And all of these things are symbolized by Obsidian, which is both expected and odd. This led me to investigate Obsidian's relationship with the nature of the Wayob. To my surprise, and soon to be yours as well, the answer I found has to do with Jade. No, not her, I'm talking about the stone itself. Which, yeah, that's a quite problematic conundrum that I have just introduced. To illustrate to you the absurdity of what I just said, it is akin to if I started researching apples and then ended up making a conclusion about broccoli. On its own, this makes absolutely no sense. What the hell does Jade have to do with Obsidian? And don't worry, I will tell you the whats and the hows, but as you can imagine, the answer will require some contextual clarification first. You see, when Citlali was first revealed, and I'm talking before anyone knew anything about her, players began to meme Citlali saying that she is the Xuan of Genshin Impact. Aside from both being short ladies with pink hair who can read memories, foretell the future, and are actually hundreds of years old yet look young, these are already a lot of similarities, aren't they? Anyway, aside from all that, Xuan happens to be one of the 6 charioteers of the Xianzhou Luofu, where she is specifically in charge of the ship's divination commission. With that being said, before we continue, keep in mind, I am not insinuating the existence of an impactful connection between the main storylines of Genshin and Star Rail. The main idea here is that Hoyoverse's games tend to follow similar themes, many of which I have discussed in the past. So by understanding these recurring details, we can construct a general outline of where the stories are heading. Disclaimer out of the way, the memes about Citlali and Xuan might not remain memes, and to explain why, let's talk about China, Mesoamerica, Obsidian, and Jade.
All powers under heaven, rise and fall of land and sea.
A star appears within the wild. A sun ascends as bright as Jade.
Morax is a god mired in very deliberate and intricate divine symbolisms. He's got gold, the sun, he has his own variations of the quaternary knot along with Solomon's seal. Morax is also associated with Vishaps through their lord Ajdaha, while he himself is inspired by Huanglong, the yellow dragon of Chinese mythology. All of these are topics that I've covered extensively in the past in relation to Genshin's world building and overall mythos, but Morax is also heavily associated with Jade. After all, the most prominent component of Zhongli's kit is his Jade shield, and for the most part, I always scoffed it off as being a reference to the Jade Emperor, a supreme Chinese deity. Which, don't get me wrong, that's true, the Jade Emperor certainly inspires Morax, yet there is probably a bit more to the symbolism of Jade. Here's why. Geologically speaking, Jade and Obsidian cannot be more different types of rocks, which is incredibly counterproductive to what I'm ultimately trying to convey here. Most rocks in the world are made out of minerals or mineral assemblages. Minerals like feldspar, mica, topaz, and quartz can all either form their own rocks, such as a beautiful topaz gemstone, or, provided with favorable environmental conditions, assemble together into a polymineralic rock like granite. Now, Jade is not really a rock, it's mainly a colloquial name that interchangeably refers to two distinct minerals, jadeite and nephrite, which form in metamorphic conditions. Jadeite, the rarer of the two, is a pyroxene mineral that forms under high-pressure, low-temperature destructive plate boundaries via the alteration of mantle rocks by supercritical fluids introduced during conversions. Oh, and when I say low temperatures, it's about 300 to 500 degrees Celsius. Actually, one more thing. I need to address this, otherwise Buttlicker29 is gonna leave a comment saying,
"Oh, actually, the wiki has jadeite formation between 600 to 1000 degrees Celsius."
yeah, the wiki is also outdated by 32 years! In other words, it's wrong. A quick fun fact for those of you who are interested, there are two methods of jadeite formation in subduction zones. The first is the direct crystallization of hydrous fluids around stuff like serpentine, and the other is through the metasomatic replacement of igneous rocks containing albite and quartz. As far as I have seen, the latter is the more dominant phenomenon. The second type of jade mineral, nephrite, is usually a product of tremolite-actinolite alteration following a long process known as serpentinization, which involves saturated aqueous equilibriums that are way beyond the scope of this video. Obsidian, on the other hand, does not even contain minerals. The rock is basically just volcanic glass that solidifies from the rapid cooling of highly felsic lava from 1000 to around 500 degrees Celsius. To briefly explain what felsic means, it's a modifier used to categorize igneous rocks based on the abundance of silica in their composition, where the scale ranges from low silica ultramafic olivine xenoliths to the utmost silica-rich felsic rhyolite. Rhyolitic lava is highly viscous. In other words, diffusion is difficult. So in situations where the temperature drops too fast, the polymerized silica will fail to undergo nucleation, inhibiting the formation of mineral crystals. So what we end up with is a type of volcanic glass that isn't a mineral, but is mineral-like. That's obsidian. Without going beyond the basics, I think you can now see how jade and obsidian have nothing in common chemically or geologically. Yet that's not what we care about. What we are interested in is their historical and cultural significance, and in that realm, obsidian and jade are very, very similar. Take a look at the two stones and think about what they symbolize in Genshin Impact. For Jade, you have the sun, the stars, the heavens, and the sky, and the Adepti even. Meanwhile, Obsidian symbolizes death, the underworld, the spirits of the ancestors, and the Angels of the Night Kingdom, who in this case are the gods of death in Natlan. If you cross-reference these with how humans utilized jade and obsidian in the past, you will find major parallels. Many Native American cultures that inspire Natlan held obsidian as a symbol of death, and the Aztecs in particular saw in its reflective properties a mirror to the soul, using it as an instrument of divination. Now listen, I haven't forgotten about Xuan and Citlali, bear with me for a bit. I mentioned the Aztecs using obsidian as mirrors to the soul because that is a practice also followed by the Masters of the Nightwind in Natlan, where they polish black stone into mirrors, believing to see reflections of their own spirits upon the smooth surface, thus bringing them closer to the formless Wayob. This clearly ain't a coincidence, especially when you realize that the first ever man-made mirror discovered so far was crafted out of obsidian dating back 8,000 years to ancient Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. In my previous video, I went over how the Night Kingdom, being a substitute for Natlan's ley lines and all, acts as a sort of reflection of Natlan itself. After all, by invading the Night Kingdom, the Abyss gained access to all of Natlan's memories. That matters because the Night Kingdom is also the basis of where the legacies and stories of Natlan's heroes are preserved by Yohualtecuhtin and the Wayob as ancient names. And the guy responsible for inscribing these names into obsidian feathers through his contract with the god of death or Nova was the god of war, Xabalanque. And it's not like we never had a precedent for such concepts before. Take Amun for example. In Gurabad, Amun was known as the god of war and order, which directly overlaps with Xabalanque's ideal. Amun was also a god who studied death and its relationship to the ley lines extensively, and even fashioned a pair of scepters out of obsidian to serve as keys for the eternal oasis where his angel, Nabu Malikata, was laid to rest.
I am sure you can see how these themes have existed in Genshin for a long time, evolving over the game's lifetime. As for Jade, it was obviously highly valued in Mesoamerica, where it represented intangible ideas like life, abundance, and regeneration. Due to its association with life and renewal, small pieces of jade were sometimes placed in the mouth of the deceased before burial. The Aztecs even had a jade goddess named Yohualtecuhtin, who was the 6th member of the 9 Lords of the Night, known as the Yohualtecuhtin, with Yohualtecuhtin being Xbalanque's angel, the creator of Natlan's Night Kingdom. Jade is also famous for its presence in Chinese art and iconography due to its association with immortality, royalty, divinity, harmony between heaven and earth, and spiritual protection. Of course, Chinese mythology plays an integral role in Genshin's overarching cosmology and world building. This is without mentioning that one of Teyvat's 7 nations, Liyue, is entirely inspired by China. However, China is also influential in other places across the Hoyoverse, most notably for this video, the Xianzhou Alliance. If this is your first ever time hearing about them, the Xianzhou is a fleet of 6, used to be 9, ships sent out by an emperor of an ancient civilization in search of everlasting life. The Xianzhou Alliance eventually found the master of immortality, Yaoche, who gave them what they were looking for, but everything comes at a price, and Yaoche's gift ended up becoming the plague marks found on each ship. The Luofu's plague mark is a tree, for example. Okay, you're gonna have to pay attention here, it's gonna get a bit complicated. On the Luofu, the Divination Commission led by Xuan are in charge of predicting the future, along with processing and preserving data and information. To those ends, they rely on a variety of advanced technologies, the most notable of which is the Matrix of Prescience Ultima. This device is actually a highly sophisticated space anchor. If you're wondering what space anchors are, there are these things, the Honkai Star Rail equivalent of Genshin's teleport waypoints, which in turn are hooked up to Teyvat's ley lines, Teyvat's memory bank. Keep in mind, the Night Kingdom was fashioned by Yohualtecuhtin out of Natlan's ley lines, making it a land of death and a land of memories. And if you recall from earlier, I talked about how thanks to their position, the Wayob of the Night Kingdom know both the past and the future, and they, by proxy, must be helpful to Citlali's divination prowess, since not only are the Natlan the closest of Natlan's tribes to the Wayob, but also Yohualtecuhtin tells the traveler how Citlali often visits her domain. With this knowledge at hand, Master Diviner Xuan writes to an intelligentsia guild scholar named Yaqub on the functions of the Matrix of Prescience Ultima. In that letter, she tells of how the past, present, and future do not exist sequentially across the axis of time, but all exist simultaneously, stating that every moment in the universe has been predetermined since its creation. Now, regardless of whether you think she's right or wrong, you will notice how her words perfectly echo those of the Pyro Archon Mahuika, since that's exactly what she tells the traveler during Black Stone under a White Stone. This is the theory of eternalism. Back to the Matrix of Prescience Ultima, it's a space anchor used by the Luofu for future predictions or quote-unquote divination. The anchor houses the Matrix of Prescience core, which is made out of countless jade abaci linked together, forming a large-scale calculation terminal which operates like a black box, treating the unknown future as a chaos system of probabilities. The way Xuan describes it, the Matrix is designed to predict the future despite the inherent unpredictability of chaos. By treating observation itself as a variable, it observes its own observation, drawing a rough outline of the future from the chaotic unknown. This self-referential process, while not fully understood, enables frighteningly accurate predictions, capturing patterns in chaos that would otherwise be impossible to foresee. As you can see, this process is a fictionalized adaptation of real-life mathematical models like chaos theory, Bayesian interference, and Markov chains. What makes the Matrix of Prescience Ultima special, though, isn't the math, at least not yet, it's the fact that its 3 calculation terminals, temporal, spatial, and karmic, are made out of jade abaci.
The Yuchue was the birthplace of the Divination Commission, where the stargazers and diviners gathered to observe the stars and plot the path ahead for the Alliance. I have seen the lithogenic ore of the fallow earth there. It is the source of our Jade Abacus technology.
This lithogenic ore is extracted from fallow earth, a divine inexhaustible mineral deposit found on the Xianzhou Luofu. Fallow earth also happens to be the plague mark granted to the Luofu by the Aeon Yaoche. The Jade Abaci are the backbone of Xianzhou's technology, as their intricate circuits are used in all of their machinery. Nonetheless, the defining feature of the Jade Abacus is its ability to simulate the future and learn from the past, making this jade both a tool for prediction and a mystical artifact linked to fate and prophecy. Now, I am not suggesting that Obsidian or Jade, for that matter, on Teyvat are the same as Star Rail's Jade Abaci. That is absolutely irrelevant to me. What I care about is the reoccurrence of these themes and ideas along with what those themes and ideas stand for. We're not trying to prove any connections, we're just looking for design patterns. And since we identified some of these design patterns, it's time we put them into application. Alright, as a quick recap, we went over the symbolic value of Jade and Obsidian in Genshin Impact, where I covered the basics behind their chemical and geological properties, but more importantly, their usage in ancient times and how that applies to Teyvat with gods such as Morax, Amun, and Xbalanque. This tied into how the Jade Abacus in Star Rail is used for divination by people like Xuan and the Divination Commission, akin to how the Masters of the Nightwind use Obsidian to connect with the Wayobs and decipher fate. The most remarkable thing, however, is perhaps how Master Diviner Xuan shares the exact same interpretation of time and fate that the Pyro Archon Mavuika has, with both of them subscribing to eternalism. And on Teyvat, the person who has the most in common with Xuan is Granny Itztli. The memes speak for themselves. Seriously though, the only thing left for Citlali is to be some kind of defensive cryo unit, and at that point you might as well just call her Xuan. That being said, I do not think that the two are even XPs or variants of one another. Rather, I simply believe that Citlali and Xuan are two different iterations of the same character concept. Earlier, I explained how both Jade and Obsidian have been heavily linked to spirituality in Mesoamerica, with one representing life and the heavens and the other representing death and the underworld. This is why I talked about Teyvat's two forms of divination, where astrologists, such as Barbelith Trismegistus, use the stars of the night sky and their reflection on water to foretell fate, while fortune-tellers like Citlali rely on the spirits of the ancestors, the Wayob, and the soul's reflection in obsidian mirrors. And although I already said that these two divination methods seem like different formulas for the same solution, I still wondered and pondered upon this matter for a while until I finally had a realization. Seelies are Jade Abaci. Kinda, close enough. From Yohualtecuhtin, we know that Seelies or fairies are the degraded forms of angels, former followers of the three moon sisters Aria, Sonnet, and Canon, who, as you can probably tell by their names, were goddesses of music and poetry. The Moon Sisters were also sovereigns of the night sky, ruling over fate and destiny. Interestingly, people's constellations on Teyvat, which dictate their fate, aren't mapped with stars, rather they consist of these weird rock thingies, which, based on what we have seen during unreconciled stars, can cause people to enter into a long dream and be possessed to fulfill the ambition of the constellation's owner. Do you remember what Citlali's name means? It means a star, or obsidian star if we combine it with her alias of Granny Itztli. Now look how cool this is going to get! Obsidian totems represent the bodies of the Night Kingdom's Wayob. The word Wayob means the sleeping in Mayan. This is super important since Citlali tells the Traveler and Xilonan that the angel Yohualtecuhtin, who is the lord of the Wayob, spends most of her time sleeping in the Night Kingdom and that they can only communicate with her consciousness in a dream. Now, I could be extra annoying and explain the following using Penacony, Robin, and Sunday, but I'm not gonna do that. I know that most of you are here for that juicy Genshin lore, so I will stick to Natlan. Each of the 6 Wayobs is a collective consciousness of their respective tribe, overseeing essential duties like the selection of the ancient names and the preservation of tribal memories. Furthermore, the people of each tribe go to their Wayob in search of guidance, since they are privy to the past and future. However, notice how when Kachina meets the Wayob of her tribe, it wasn't a group of spirits all talking at the same time. Instead, we got a single female voice, and she was called the Great Spirit of this land. This is crucial as every single Wayob we have seen so far has been female. Just like every single angel we have heard of so far too. The slumbering mistress of the Night Kingdom is one such angel, and so is the goddess of flowers, Nabu Malikata, who was known as the Mistress of Dreams. Nabu Malikata was likely a major influence in Amun's pursuit of the Golden Slumber, where he attempted to create an enormous collective consciousness within a dream to defy fate and the heavenly principles. Now, in theory, a Wayob should be a collective consciousness of the spirits of the ancestors, given what the Night Kingdom is, but there's an issue with such an assumption. Mavwika tells the traveler that souls in the Night Kingdom reincarnate. As a matter of fact, even souls in the Ley Lines reincarnate. We know this thanks to Cassiodor and Yaimiko. Therefore, since souls do not remain within Ley Lines, the Wayob must be ever-changing, with no definitive identity, which is incongruent with what we observe when Kachina converses with her tribe's Wayob. So, are the Wayob really a collective consciousness of ancestral spirits, or is there something else going on here? Well, you need not but take a quick look at their manifestations to realize what the Wayob really are. A Wayob manifestation is described as a physical embodiment of the Wayob's will, and so far, all the evidence we have points towards them being female, just like the Great Spirit of the Children of the Echoes. And yes, they are also female in Chinese, this is not a mistranslation. As for their appearance, it is abundantly clear that these manifestations are inspired by biblical angels, which aligns perfectly with the fact that they are said to have formed after the people of Natlan began communicating with the kingdom of the Lord of the Night, whom we know is an angel. Speaking of angels, during the first civilization, they were Celestial's envoys, tasked with guiding humanity, presumably due to their charity and wisdom, but I think there is more to it. You see, guidance itself entails that the guide knows the way or is capable of ascertaining the right path with a high degree of certainty. In this case, the angels were supposed to guide humans through their lives, meaning that the path they should know is the future? So, am I implying that angels are capable of seeing the future? Yes, absolutely. In fact, we know they can because the Jinni Lilupar, who isn't an angel but was made directly by one, provides her husband, King Urmazd of Gurabad, with a series of prophecies, all of which were fulfilled in due time. And for an even better example than Lilupar, the angel Sibilla foretold Remus that he would become the god king of the greatest empire in the world, until the day comes when his empire would eventually collapse. Speaking of Sibilla, she sacrificed her life to become Phobos, the basis of Remus's Grand Symphony, which was intended to grant humanity their wishes and free them from their predetermined destiny. As Phobos, Sibilla essentially became the host to a collective will, a unified symphony played by all Remurians, and eventually, had Remus's plans come to fruition, all of humanity. Okay, Remus created the Grand Symphony to escape fate, and as discussed earlier, fate on Teyvat is written on the stars of the firmament, while the astrologists of the Conrian Crimson Moon dynasty are said to have seen the origins of all the world's fate through the inverted image of the false sky. I find this idea of reading the future, or fate, through the inverted sky very intriguing, especially when you consider how Mona explains that Barbelith reflected Teyvat's night sky to create the starry sky of Simulanka, and by extension, its fate. But do you know what else is a reflection of Teyvat's night sky? The ley lines.
Do you ever get the feeling that the ley lines have a regular flow, similar to the way that celestial bodies follow fixed orbits? If we were looking down from on high, I wonder whether we'd find that the ley lines are just the reflections of the stars upon the Earth. Not all astrological phenomena can be directly observed. Some are deductions based on other details that we know. It's the same situation with the ley lines. The parts of them that are hidden underground can be identified via elemental energy, sound, and other phenomena.
Now, Natlan doesn't have deep-rooted ley lines. It has the Night Kingdom, and in the Night Kingdom we find Yohualtecuhtin and the 6 great spirits who maintain Natlan's memories. But here's the thing. Since souls in Natlan reincarnate, according to Mavuika, the Wayob cannot possibly be collective consciousnesses of the tribal spirits that are never permanently there. The more logical explanation is that each great spirit is an angel like Sibylla that preserves perfect copies of the people's souls and memories, hence why all the Wayob we have seen so far take on female identities and manifest their wills in angelic forms. This also indirectly elaborates on what Citlali likely meant when she told Paimon that the Lord of the Night isn't necessarily stronger than the great spirits. You see, I always knew that Teyvat's false sky would inevitably be shattered. However, I expected a glass-like firmament, yet what it turned out to be is more digital or electronic. But thinking about it now makes even more sense, since that is closer to how Rubedo is depicted in Fullmetal Alchemist, which in turn heavily inspires Genshin Impact. So if the ley lines are indeed a reflection of the starry sky, a reflection of fate, then from the aforementioned perspective, one could argue that the relation between the two is an integrative one, where the stars of the night sky act as the coding language and the code, while the ley lines serve as the primary execution environment for said code, in other words, the mainframe. Therefore, back to what Citlali told Paimon, consider the 6 great spirits as the 6 processor cores of the Night Kingdom, with Yohualtecuhtin as the control unit, since she's the one who built the Night Kingdom out of ley lines. And before you say that this sounds too far-fetched, no, it's not. Guys, Hoyoverse are really good at weaving and reusing similar themes across their games. Take Fairy from Zenless Zone Zero, for example. She's an artificial intelligence currently assisting the proxy Phaethons Wise and Bell in Hollow missions and exploration. By the way, the Hollows are the equivalent of Genshin's Abyss and ZZZ. She specializes in this thanks to being one of the 4 super programs known as the Keys, with the other 3 AIs called Jinni, Ghost, and Yokai. Paimon, the Paimon who sent us our mail, might unironically be such a thing. Sticking with Yohualtecuhtin though, she is an angel, and she tells the traveler that angels in their degraded forms are commonly known as either fairies or Seelies, and Seelies are called fairies in Chinese, on top of the fact that a Seelie is a fairy in Scottish folklore. This is where the Jade Obsidian analogy finally comes into play. Think about the Obsidian totems, which act as the Wayob's bodies, akin to the Matrix of Prescience Ultima, the space anchor that houses the Matrix of Prescience. But instead of the Jade Abaci that make up the giant computing terminal, you have angels, souls, and memories performing variable observations instead. Additionally, space anchors are Star Rail's equivalent of teleport waypoints, with both being able to warp people from one location to another. This aligns with how the Great Spirits use many Obsidian proxies to extend their consciousness all over the Ley Line Realm of the Night Kingdom, because if you look underneath the Obsidian totems, you will notice that they contain a visually identical material to what the waypoints are made from. The Great Spirits also manifest their wills through Jade sigils, encased in obsidian to take on physical forms in Natlan, in the land of the living, in the land of the waking. Alright, time to answer all of the questions I've postulated in this video. How can Citlali and the Masters of the Nightwind divine fate, the same fate that Barbelith and Mona divine from the night sky, through communicating with the Night Kingdom? What do the angels and the Wayob have to do with this divination process? How can they foresee fate? And what is the significance of them relying on collective consciousnesses to do so? Here we go! Xuan says that the chaos system's inherent unpredictability presents the biggest hurdle in predicting the future accurately due to the fact that the very act of observing alters the future, so the observation itself will affect the final operation of the system. What Xuan is referencing here is a real quantum theory called the observer effect, which is an outcome of the uncertainty principle developed by the German physicist Werner Karl Heisenberg. Through the observer effect, Heisenberg argued that observing a particle forces it to take on a definite state, and the most famous demonstration of this is the double-slit experiment. I am sure that all of you have heard about it before if you have studied advanced physics for any meaningful amount of time. To overcome this problem, the matrix of prescience treats the observation as a variable and observes the act of observation. This technique creates an accurate predictive outcome by drawing the future into reality from the past. From that perspective, the collective consciousnesses of the Wayob are the countless Jade abaci making up the matrix of prescience. But instead of circuits and superconductors, we have musical notes or symphonies, if we use Sibylla as an example. As for the predictive technique itself, well, the reason I suspect the matrix of prescience to be analogous with the technique employed by the angels is precisely because they are heavily associated with dreams. After all, the name Wayob means the sleeping, and they are said to know the past and the future. Citlali seems to get a lot of her prophecies and visions while she is dreaming, which coincides with the fact that the Wayob, aka the sleeping, communicate with the people through dreams. So when Citlali sleeps, she sees glimpses of the future by connecting to the Wayob's collective consciousness, which I linked to the Xianzhou's matrix of prescience. Dreams are definitionally only based on the memories of our past experiences. It is physically impossible for them to be anything else. They are past experiences that get altered by imagination, synthesis, and creative recombination. But here's the catch. Dreams often draw on our brain's ability to create simulations of potential future scenarios as a way of problem solving or rehearsing possible outcomes. This is known as the threat simulation theory in evolutionary psychology. Therefore, a dream is in a way an observation of your observation. You are looking at imaginary scenarios constructed from abstract and/or chaotic memories, which are influenced by the past through creative recombination. And now imagine if you have access to hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of living Jade circuits, of Jade abaci, or should I say, of consciousnesses, dreaming together in the reflection of the starry sky above, all analyzing observations of past observations to simulate the most probable future. Well, in this case, you can foresee fate, I suppose. And that's how I think the Angels of the Night Kingdom, the Wayob, can see fate. This is also likely why Citlali wanted to take a look at the Traveler's past adventures from when we first met her. She was checking their memories to divine their future. Now, hear me out. During the Archon quest Beyond the Smoke and Mirrors, Auroron ripped the Traveler's consciousness into the Night Kingdom to meet with Il Capitano. And since he is Citlali's adoptive grandson, we can assume that she taught him everything he knows. But who taught Citlali everything she knows? Remember, she's the best fortune teller in Natlan, so her techniques must be more advanced than those around her from the Masters of the Nightwind. Here's the funny thing. Citlali shared her senses with the Traveler and Paimon in order to allow them to see special phlogiston energy emitted by Auroron. Normally, this is supposed to only share basic senses, yet the Traveler and Paimon were able to also hear Citlali's thoughts, but she wasn't able to hear theirs. This might have to do with the Traveler's will being stronger than hers due to being a descender. Anyway, I suspect that Yohualtecuhtin is the one who taught Citlali this spell, since she comments on how rare it is, and this stuff seems to be the domain of angels and gods. Also, the Spirit Speaker stone Citlali made has horns in it. As a matter of fact, horns are a symbol of the Masters of the Nightwind at large, and that's important since based on Nilu's attire, Nabu Malikata had horns, so don't be surprised if the Lord of the Night does too. Oh, and Yohualtecuhtin tells the Traveler about a little girl who visits often, with the little girl being implied as Citlali. Obviously, the use of little here is relative to Yohualtecuhtin's age. I was wondering how fortune tellers from the Mictlan can see the same fate as the one which astrologists like Barbellith Trismegistus see from the stars. But if we treat the stars like a reflection of fate in the sky, then the answer really is that they're both looking at the same thing. One group reads the code directly, while the other look at the processing units. In the words of the legendary first alchemist Hermes Trismegistus, as above, so below. Speaking of Barbelith, even though I spent 40 minutes discussing ley lines and the starry sky, I actually don't think that this is the method which both she and Vedrfolnir used to see fate. I suspect that they have a much more advanced and straightforward technique, especially Vedrfolnir, because his ability to see fate is something that I will talk about in the future, since we have reached the end of this video. Holy, this was long. As always, huge thanks to everyone who supports this channel on Patreon, and thank you for watching till here. For now, I've been My Name for now, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.